Pod. I am your host, as always, Journal staff writer Sean Reider. Today we have a special Rivalry Week edition of the pod. We have the great Nick Coppola, Las Cruces Sun-News, NMSU beat writer coming on. He does a great job, fabulous job, really, covering New Mexico State. Very, very excited to share our conversation with him. Always gives great insights to where New Mexico State is and what they're kind of doing and how things are kind of looking heading into this game. Obviously, big rivalry tilt on Saturday at UNM, University Stadium. Before we get into all that, though, I do want to encourage you guys, as always, to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Albuquerque Journal YouTube. If you are watching this pod, you can just go over and click the button and all that. That means means a lot, helps us a ton. I also encourage you to subscribe and follow our podcast on Apple Podcasts and Spotify as well. And keep tuning into the live shows that Jeff Grammer and I do every Tuesday after Jason X weekly media availability, and then after either Fridays or Saturdays after every football game that UNM plays. We appreciate the engagement. We love doing the shows, and we love interacting with you guys. So I encourage you all to keep tuning in and keep watching. But with that being said, excited to share our conversation with Nick Coppola on all things NMSU heading into this game.
If you enjoy our podcast, please like and subscribe and consider becoming a digital subscriber to the Albuquerque Journal to help us bring you more content like this. You can find this episode and all of our podcasts on the Albuquerque Journal website, abqjournal.com, as well as YouTube, iTunes, and Spotify. See the show notes for a discount code on a digital subscription. Thank you for supporting the Albuquerque Journal, New Mexico's leading news.
All right, I am pleased to be joined by the great Nick Coppola, NMSU beat writer for the Las Cruces Sun-News. He does a phenomenal job covering NMSU and preps in Las Cruces. Nick, thanks for coming on today, man.
Of course, yeah. Thanks for having me.
Special Rivalry Week edition of the pod. Obviously, it is New Mexico State game week at University Stadium in Albuquerque at 2 p.m. on Saturday. Heading to this one, NMSU is 2-1 in head coach Tony Sanchez's second year. Beat Bryant 19-3 in the opener. Tulsa 21-14 in the second game. Kind of a good win for NMSU at this point. Gives them a transitive win over Oklahoma State. And then went on the road and lost to La Tech 49-14 in their Conference USA opener. Like UNM, the team's coming off a bye. Nick, you were on the ground yesterday to hear Sanchez and quarterback Logan Fife and linebacker Tyler Martinez kind of talk about it. What is the vibe around the team heading to this one?
Yeah, so I mean they're optimistic. They feel pretty good. They feel like they got some things to fix and to really work on. But they're feeling optimistic. They're feeling good about themselves, and they obviously got some things they got to work on. But like I said, but they've had 2 weeks to prepare for it. They're coming off a bye. They know what they need to fix, and they just went to their new facility as well, so they're feeling really good about that. It's in a lot of ways throughout the locker room, and yeah, they feel pretty good.
This would be, I believe, the first time. I think this is the first time both teams have had a winning record heading into this game since 1992. We kind of heard Tyler Martinez and Fife talk a little bit about it, and Sanchez too. Frankly, the idea that in an era where player movement is so frequent, happens every single year, particularly at places like UNM and NMSU, it's almost kind of hard to communicate the importance of the rivalry to a lot of new guys year after year. What have you kind of heard from those guys in terms of, with all the new guys that NMSU has, how they've kind of communicated the importance of this game and what it means to the state?
Yeah, Logan Fife talked a little bit about that yesterday, and it seems he's pretty aware of that, aware of what's going on and things like that. He says that he said yesterday that these are the type of games that you play for. These are the type of games that you go into college football for. So he seems pretty excited about it. He seems pretty aware of what this rivalry is all about, and I think they're learning from the coaching staff and from some of the returning players about what this rivalry really means. And so I think they got the gist of it at least.
As I alluded to, a pretty solid start for NMSU. Obviously, 2-1, a 3-1 start. If they do get to that and beat UNM, I think that would be the first since 1999. What have you seen from NMSU through the first 3 games at this point?
Yeah, so I mean, they played good defense the first 2 games of the season. That kind of waned off during the Louisiana Tech game because they had trouble tackling. And things like that. But overall, it's been good defense for at least 2 out of the 3 games. Offense, it's very consistent. They'll have waves. They'll have ups where they'll be pretty good. They'll be up, and they can get the ball moving because they have a quarterback who at least raises the ceiling of the offense compared to last year where they just did not have good quarterback play at all. And then they'll have plays where they can't do anything. And, they'll go 3 and out, or they'll lose yardage and so like that. They'll commit turnover. Logan Fife has had a pretty bad turnover problem so far this season. And they also can't run the ball. They have the worst rushing offense in Conference USA so far. So it's an offense that is sporadic, mostly in the passing game. But yeah, I think they would love to see a lot more on offense and better defensive play compared to what they had last week.
You touched on it. I mean, a lot of struggles last year because NMSU just simply did not get adequate production from any of its quarterbacks. You did mention they brought in Montana transfer Logan Fife, formerly of Fresno State as well. I was looking at Fife's kind of numbers like on PFF yesterday. I'm like, there's big time throws and turnover worthy throws, that PFF grades. And he does have a pretty high rate of big time throws. I think he's got 9, which is not far from the top of the country. And then he also has a solid amount, a higher amount in the country, a higher rate of turnover-worthy throws. What is he you talked about there, but what has he brought to the team so far? And, how much of an upgrade has it been compared to the play that you saw last year?
I think it's been a noticeable upgrade. I think it's been I think it's been significant. I think, he's clearly raised the ceiling of, NMSU's offense and the quarterback play. He'll make plays that, quarterbacks last year for New Mexico State can only really dream about making. He'll throw the needle on a lot of throws. He can give him a deep attack, which they didn't really have a lot of last year. So yeah, he'll make plays, that shows that he has been a big upgrade and has been, someone that New Mexico State needed. But like I say, he's got a turnover problem. We had 3 last week against Louisiana Tech, threw 2 very bad interceptions, had a fumble where the ball just kind of slipped out of his hand, and that was returned for us. We could score a touchdown. So yeah, his biggest issue right now is that he seems to be forced to a lot of stuff. He just kind of plays outside of the structure a little bit. And he just needs to play more like Dan Montana, just a little more efficient, not trying to force things too much, and just go with what he knows and go with what he knows within the system. And that's just to play sound and, make plays that can raise the ceiling of the offense like he's shown.
NMSU also brought in a new offensive coordinator in David Yost, formerly of a lot of different places, Missouri, Oregon, Utah State. What are you seeing out of this scheme, and how is it different from last year's scheme in particular?
It's still tempo. They run a lot of stuff out of shotgun. It's very screen based. They run a lot of screens a little bit, but that also can open up the explosive passing game a little bit. So it's a lot of short passes, a lot of quick game with the occasional explosive pass. That's kind of what I figured what the offense would be coming into the season. The Yost offense depends on running the ball a lot. Maybe Yost really likes to run the football, but obviously they have not been able to do that much. So they really had to lean on the pass game so much. It's maybe a little bit different than Yost offenses in the past that could actually run the ball effectively a little bit. But yeah, kind of something I knew in the season. Up tempo, a lot of stuff out of shotgun. Screens, short passes that can open up the occasional deep ball like we've seen.
It has been surprising. And you've touched on it too. NMSU does not run it a lot, and when they do not run it particularly well, averaging 47.67 rushing yards per game, which is not only last in Conference USA, it's dead last in the 136 team FBS. We kind of heard Tony Sanchez talk a little bit about it yesterday, but why, from your point of view, have they struggled to run the ball effectively, and how are they kind of addressing it at this point?
I believe it's the offensive line. Coming into the season, they had 4 new starters on the offensive line. BJ Tiller at right guard was their only returner. So they've already had a lot of things that they've had to fix, a lot of things that they've had to, replace. And 2 of their 3 guys on the interior, Mateo Rodriguez, their left guard, and Kai Wheeler at center, did not have starting experience, or at least not much starting experience coming into the season. So you got guys on the interior who haven't really played that much. You got guys elsewhere who, are still trying to gel with everybody else. And they've also had an injury. They were going to have Micah Lee at left tackle. He tore his ACL in the first game of the season. And so they had to shift someone over from right tackle to left tackle and put a new right tackle in there. So there's been a lot of movement. Just a lot of, new faces that are struggling to kind of play in cohesion and amongst each other, and especially on the interior line where they're kind of just having to learn stuff on the fly because they haven't played much recently. I haven't played in past years. So just they've had a lot of trouble run blocking. And I believe that's the main issue. They just can't really get good run blocking and good holes for the running backs to go through.
Sanchez talked about it over the summer, the kind of desire and the need to revamp the wide receiver room after last year. He just said kind of want to add more firepower in that regard. They did bring in a good deal of new receivers, but I do know there's at least one injury there that's kind of playing a role. What is that room kind of looking like heading into this one?
Yeah, I mean, there's more depth in there than they had last year. Last year there just seemed that there was only a couple guys that they can really lean on, and it might be that way this year too. But there's more going on there, and especially if they get TK King back this week, that could open up a whole nother elements of their passing game, the speed and dynamic ability. But yeah, I mean, they feel better about it. It does feel more deep. It does feel more robust than it did last year. Based on the guys that they brought in and the guys who have made leaps that are returners this year.
TK King, obviously, Wyoming transfer. He was very, very, very dynamic returner last year for the Cowboys. What did Sanchez say yesterday, kind of about his injury status heading into this?
Yeah, so it's a hamstring injury. He says he's still feeling a little bit gingerly. Still feeling he's not back yet. He officially marked him now as questionable for this week. Doesn't look like he is. He's going to play. He's been week to week for basically the entire season, but he hasn't played yet. So odds are he probably doesn't take the field this Saturday, but something could happen, and we could see him. Who knows?
Second-year defensive coordinator in Joe Morris. There's always some like one or two random stats like throughout the year that keep kind of changing where NMSU and UNM are right there for whatever reason. The Aggies are allowing 22 points per game, which is coincidentally the exact same as UNM. What are you kind of seeing out of this defense at this point? I know you touched on it. It was a little bit of a long night for them in Ruston, but do you think that's kind of maybe an aberration or something that did raise some legitimate concerns going forward?
Yeah, I mean, they just gotta tackle, they just gotta, they gotta be more disciplined, be more sound, have less critical mistakes than they did against Louisiana Tech, because that's something that they didn't have against Bryan and Tulsa. They were pretty sound. They put gaps well, they tackled well, and they were just better, against Tulsa. I mean, who knows, what we see this Saturday, because you look at the Tulsa game and be like, okay, they can have that kind of a defense against a Division I team. Then you look at Louisiana Tech game, and it's like, oh no, there's all these errors. So I mean, I do think the defense is better than last year's. Last year they couldn't really play much defense at all. But they're better on the defensive line with all the new guys that they brought in. They have more depth in the secondary. So we'll see if they can kind of turn back what they did against Bryan and Tulsa and fix some of the issues they had against La Tech.
I remember buying a lot of NMSU defense stock after that Liberty game last year. Even though they didn't win that one, I was really impressed, and that was that not a great investment for the rest of the year. But Tony Sanchez, he made a point of kind of mentioning how much how much UNM wants to run the ball, and talking about head coach Jason Act. You said, he's an old line coach, and that's what they want to do. You see it, and that is 100% true. Do you think, from what you've seen, the Aggies are kind of equipped to stop the the kind of 3-4-headed monster that UNM is working with in the backfield right now?
I mean, if they repeat what they did against Louisiana Tech, then probably not. I mean, like I said, it just kind of depends on what defense we see. If that Louisiana Tech game is just a fluke and they're able to repeat what they did in the first two games of this season, then I think they'll be okay. If they continue to have some of those kind of undisciplined errors where they just can't tackle or they let guys get yards after contact, then it's probably going to be a long day for them.
We talked about, obviously this NMSU offense is struggling to run the ball. A pretty clear weakness to a certain point that could be traced to the offensive line as well. And then there are, it's sporadic, but they do some nice things in the passing game for sure, and kinds of the strengths and the weaknesses of the offense. What are, in your opinion, kind of the true strengths and weaknesses of this defense at this point?
Yeah, so offensively, it is those explosive passing games. They can, be explosive in that passing game with Logan Fife. So that's probably their biggest strength offensively. Defensively, I don't know, they do have Tyler Martinez in linebacker. That's one of their big strengths. He's playing with a hurt fractured hand right now. So he'll and he's been good. He got his first career interception last week, so he had a good game. Defensive line, has been a strength, especially on the interior. They have more guys. Ezra Christensen has been great. Kolchnek has come back from his injury last year, and he's been pretty solid. And the front seven, I would say, just that's their biggest strength defensively.
When you kind of look at this game and you kind of look at this matchup, I mean, is there anywhere that you kind of think like, hey, this is where NMSU has a clear edge on UNM, and kind of vice versa? Hey, this is an area where UNM can really threaten NMSU.
Yeah, I don't know, that's a good question. Yeah, that's a good question. Um, yeah, I don't know if there's maybe just a clear advantage. But I will say, obviously, for the defensive line, they should be able to, stop the run, pretty well. So that's probably their UNM's advantage. And I don't know, maybe this is the same way for maybe New Mexico State stops the run less effectively than UNM. But I don't know. I feel like the kind of the defensive front that New Mexico State has, maybe that's their advantage on the other side.
This feels, in a lot of respects, like a big game, and a part of that is because of the, it always is a big game, regardless, especially given the rivalry and what it means to a lot of people. But this one feels a little bit bigger than normal because of kind of the, the teams, 2-1 starts and all that as well. For this NMSU team in particular, I mean, like, obviously this game is always going to be huge and all that. But to get a 3-1 start heading into, I believe they play their next game in 5 days after this game, heading into kind
6
of the
days,
meat,
yeah.
6 days, the kind of meat of the Conference USA schedule and all that. How big would a win be for NMSU here?
Yeah, it'd be pretty big. They, obviously, beating UNM, that'd be pretty big, for them, going on the road, and going back to kind of a winning ways. They have a winning record right now. So that would move into 3-1. Obviously, coming up the short week, they play Sam Houston next Thursday to go back into conference play and go into the weekday Conference USA games. So yeah, win would be pretty huge, especially since they gain a lot of rest, a lot of time to heal up before the games. It'd be a pretty big thing for them, going back into conference play, because, the beginning half of their schedule is the easier part of their schedule. It gets a lot tougher down the stretch, where they got to play, Liberty, and then Western Kentucky, and then Tennessee, and, and things like that. Just so they got to get their wins where they can now. So it's important, this Saturday. It's very important for New Mexico State.
And I also add too, like, big game, but even if NMSU loses and they drop to 2-2, or if UNM loses and they drop to 2-2, I think you'll definitely see some fan interest kind of wane a little bit for both programs. It doesn't feel like a death sentence for either team in terms of like wanting to make a bowl and all that. I mean, that's kind of how I feel about UNM. And you mentioned, kind of the need to get wins where they can, all that. But if you're 2-2 coming out of your first 4 games, if you're NMSU, I mean, do you still think a bowl is on the table as a possibility going forward?
I mean, they're gonna think that, but I feel like some of the fans are gonna feel like, oh, the picture's now coming into fuller view. We're gonna focus on what the team is really about and things like that. So I mean, it would still be possible, but I mean, getting the win this Saturday, and now you only need 3 more wins for the rest of the season. That's important.
I have always struggled to pick this game in terms of scores and all that. And then the 2 previous games that I've covered here, I've gotten the team right, although I haven't gotten the game flow right. I do think it is always kind of a tougher game to pick. Do you have a score prediction off the top of your head?
Maybe not an exact score prediction, but I do want to have a winner that I'm going to pick. I'm going UNM for this one. I just think they've looked better than New Mexico State has. Obviously, they're coming off a high with that win over UCLA, and things like that. Both of them kind of had similar FCS matchups. I mean, UNM's down against Idaho State. NMSU is really struggling up against Bryan. It's a pull away from them. But I don't know. That's just I feel a little better about UNM right now than I do NMSU, and that's gonna be my winner prediction.
I do want to get into one other kind of non-football related thing for our audience as well, although like football always plays a role in this stuff to some degree. NMSU, their athletic director search is kind of kicking into gear and all that. What have you kind of heard on that, and what have you kind of seen, and what can you kind of share?
We'll see. I'm trying to figure some stuff out in terms of what actually is coming on. And I feel like it's going to be pretty big, but I'm trying to confirm some more details on that, basically.
Okay. Well, Nick, thank you again for coming on. As always, always a pleasure talking with you. Looking forward to seeing you on Saturday. You can follow Nick's work at, I believe it's lcsunnews.com, correct?
Thank you. That's correct.
lcsunnews.com does a great job covering New Mexico State. Really genuinely appreciate like the just legitimately the effort he puts into covering it, because there are not a lot of G5 programs that have a lot of beat writers like Nick. So it's awesome to follow. It's awesome to see. And yeah, Nick, thanks again for coming on, man.
Appreciate that. Thank you very much, Sean.